There's been a number of changes to Taylor Guitars lineup since the last time we did a video like this, so it's time to do it again. Today, we'll be going through each body shape and size that Taylor Guitars offers, so stick around. Hey, you're watching Alamo Music TV. My name is Chris McKee with Alamo Music Center in San Antonio, Texas. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and like our videos. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure to visit our Teespring store linked below for our custom designed t-shirts. And, go to alamomusic.com and buy something, or just send me cash. That's cool. I'm good with that. So as I mentioned, it's been a while. It's been years actually since the last time we did a video like this, but there's been a number of changes and introductions of new models to the lineup. So it's time to do it again. Today we're going to go through the entire Taylor lineup as far as the different body shapes go, from the smallest to the largest. I'm going to tell you about their dimensions, what they're for, and what might appeal best to you. We're going to start at the very, very small end of it with the guitar that started a bit of a travel guitar craze. That is the Baby Taylor. Now, I own a Baby Taylor, and there's lots and lots of other people that also own a Baby Taylor. Peoples all over the world. So the Baby Taylor is a small travel-sized diminutive square-shouldered dreadnought shape that Taylor came out with back in the 90s. Now, if you ever saw one of those, it looked a little different than this. It had bright pink baby on the headstock and a wonderful little hang tag shaped like a pick that said "Pick Me Up." It's adorable, isn't it? Well, this guitar with fantastic construction and a solid top has found its way into a lot of different players' hands. They've used it for everything from traveling to Nashville tuning, which is stringing up with the octave set from a 12-string guitar, to all sorts of other things. And it served early on as kind of the Skunk Works prototype platform for Taylor's new NT neck design. So let's talk about the dimensions of this diminutive little travel guitar. It is 22 3/4 inch scale length from the nut to the saddle. The nut is 1 11/16, and you're going to hear that a lot. Pretty much all of the guitars that are made in Mexico in Taylor's Tecate factory are 1 11/16. The length of the body shape is 15 3/4 inch. The width is 12.5 inches, and the depth is 3 3/8 inch. It's a small little guitar. Now, what's been wonderful about this guitar, even when I got mine way back in 2000, I think it was. At that time, they were still made in the US, by the way. Interesting little note. But what's been interesting about this little guitar is the big sound that came out of it. Featuring a solid spruce top with bracing designed specifically to get as much volume out of this little guitar. I remember at times sitting around with people with large full-size guitars and my little baby sounding bigger than their guitars. It also featured a very rudimentary version of Taylor's NT bolt-on neck. Now this does not have all of the shims and stuff. It doesn't even have a heel on the neck. It really is a lot like the neck you kind of find on a Stratocaster. Nevertheless, these are fantastic guitars. They continue to be very, very popular, despite maybe being dethroned by the next guitar that we're going to look at. And that is, of course, the GS Mini. The GS Mini has supplanted the Baby as pretty much the travel guitar that most people want to have. And you can kind of see why. It's still on the small side, but it's bigger and is big enough to really create a huge sonic difference in the sound that you're going to get, and the playability changes as well. Now, the 22 3/4 inch scale length with light strings on this guitar can at times, for me, feel a little too slinky. The GS Mini, on the other hand, has a 23.5 inch scale length, but medium gauge strings, which give it a feel of light gauge strings on a normal full-size acoustic guitar from Taylor. We'll talk about that scale length in a little bit. So the GS Mini is extremely popular. It is a shrunken down Grand Symphony body shape, a body shape that Taylor came up with a number of years ago in the aughts. And it belts out a ton of tone. Solid spruce top or mahogany top or koa top. Back and sides of various materials. This one happens to be a Quilted Sapele limited edition. Ooh, Ah, is that pretty? Wonderful gig bag and just the portability and tone. There's a lot of people that have actually used this as their primary guitar, not just a travel guitar or something that they have in addition to their other guitars because the sound really is that big. By the way, little trivia point, a lot of people don't know this. The sound hole's bigger than the sound hole on a normal size guitar. It's one of the ways that so much tone comes out of this little guitar. How little is it? Well, the scale length, as we mentioned, is 23.5-inch scale length. The nut is, again, 1 11/16. I kind of wish it was a little wider, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, the body length is 17.5/8 inches. Compare that to the 15 3/4 inches of the Baby Taylor we just saw. The waist, or the width rather, is 14 3/8 inches, and the depth is 4 7/16 inch. Now, part of the depth on these, you have to keep in mind, is not just the edge of the guitar, but also the bowl shape that you have on the back of it. Let's talk about that for a minute. I've seen a number of times on the internet people asking, hey, I just bought a GS Mini, I just bought an Academy, I just bought a 110, something like that, and it's kind of warped on the back of it. That's on purpose. There's no bracing on the back of this guitar, and since it's layered wood, Taylor can press that shape and give it the rigidity it needs through that bowl shape that's back here. But it's a subtle bowl shape. We're not talking ovation here or anything like that. So 4 7/16 depth, that is the GS Mini. And like I said, it comes in a number of different wood combinations and pricing from around $500 up to just about $1,000 for the GS Mini Koa Plus. Now let's compare it to the new kid on the block, because I know so many of you guys are wondering about this. Now this is Taylor's new GT, Grand Theater body shape, okay? As you can tell, sitting on my lap here, they are different in size. And I want to emphasize some of the differences with the GT because there's been some confusion, maybe some of it on my part, that it is really just a slightly bigger GS Mini. It's not. You might say that the GS Mini was the inspiration for the GT. So many people wanted something like this in all solid wood, but Andy Powers has gone on record as saying, you know, you really aren't going to get anything more out of the GS Mini by making it solid wood. You need to add a bit of real estate to the mix, and then you can make a wonderful guitar that's kind of straddling the difference between a travel size guitar and a full size guitar. You might think of this kind of in the way that we think of parlor guitars. This is not a travel guitar. It's travel guitar-esque because it kind of sits in the middle between the GS Mini and a full size guitar. How much in the middle? Well, let's talk and compare. So on the GT, the scale length from the nut to the saddle is 24 1/8 inches. Let's compare that to this, which is 23.5 inches. Now, I'm jumping ahead of myself, but a short scale guitar from Taylor is 24 7/8 inches. You following that? Between 23.5 and 24 7/8, we have 24 1/8. It's basically right in the middle. Also in the middle is the nut width. 1 23/32, right? Not 11/16, not 3/4, 23/32. Again, this nut is right in the middle. This is like Malcolm in the middle. Anyways, so the length of this is 18.5 inches. The width is 15 inches, and the depth, from my measurement, is 4 inches. Now I'm going to put an asterisk next to all of those measurements because I did those myself. Why did I do those myself? That's a good question, because they're not on Taylor's website for any of the current Grand Theater models. I don't know why, but as of today, when we're shooting this video, it's not currently on their website. So those might be a little off, but I think they're pretty close. So anyways, you can tell that it is bigger than the GS Mini. In addition to that, this one is made in the US. It features all solid wood construction, and we are now moving to a new bracing pattern. So the GS Mini had X-Class bracing. This had X bracing, designed for these body shapes in mind. This new body shape also has C-Class bracing, a cantilevered kind of asymmetrical half of V-Class bracing that we've seen introduced across the lineup. That is the GT, and we can see it already going throughout the line. This is the GTE Urban Ash. It has now been introduced as an GT 811E, or non-E, and a GT K21, all Koa guitar that's available right now, and available for pre-order. If you haven't seen those videos, make sure to subscribe and click on the link above for the latest GT K21E video. Very, very cool guitar. So that's the GS Mini, and you can see how it compares to the GT. But here's another common question we're getting. How does the GT compare to the next larger body shape? And this might be what actually instituted this video today. This question right here. If you are looking for a small body, all solid wood Taylor, prior to the introduction of the Grand Theater, you had one option. That was the Grand Concert body shape. And what an option it is. Now, it should be said that the Grand Concert body shape is available both in the US line from Taylor, featuring all solid wood construction in a number of different series. It's also available from their Mexico Tecate factory in the Academy series, the Academy 12, 12E, and the Academy 12N and 12NE, which is the nylon variant of it, all feature the same body shape. The Grand Concert is also available as either a 14 fret or a 12 fret model. This one that I'm holding is an 812 CE 12 fret. So you can see the slotted headstock, and you can tell that the neck is mounted at the 12th fret at the body, moving the bridge down. The scale length stays the same. So let's look at these visually first of all, and you can see that the Grand Concert is a bit bigger than the Grand Theater. Again, this is designed to kind of bridge that gap between a guitar like the GS Mini that would be honestly too small for all solid wood construction and a guitar like the Grand Concert. I've had a number of conversations at this point from people who are trying to make this decision. It's not an easy one. I will tell you this. You have more options currently available on the Grand Concert body shape as far as the different wood combinations and series. There's more availability. You can get it in a 12 fret. The GT is not available in a 12 fret with any of the current introductions that they've done so far. This comes with a hard shell case. This comes with the awesome Aero case. There's a number of differences. And if you go to something like the 912 or the new 812 with the armrest, the radius armrest, it might actually feel more comfortable to your strumming hand. So these are all things to keep in mind. Let's talk about the scale length though. This is a slightly longer scale length, so this is going to have a slightly tauter feel to it. This scale length is 24 7/8. That's the typical full-size scale length from Taylor prior to the introduction of the GT. It is 1 3/4 inch nut width on this one. It would be 1 11/16 on the Academy 12. And I think it's like 1 7/8 for the nylon string. It's just shy of the full 2 inches you normally get with a nylon string, I believe. Asterisks on that one as well. The body length is 19.5. The width is 15 inches, and the depth is 4 3/8 inches. So let's just consider those dimensions here as we look at these two. 18.5, 19.5. So there's an inch difference in the length. Okay. The waist. This is actually more narrow, or actually they're about the same size. This is 15, this is 15, so the width is going to be the same. And that's why I say getting this with the armrest could actually be more comfortable than the GT, just something to consider. And then on the depth, this is slightly deeper. It's 4 3/8 inch deeper. And that is going to give you some potentially additional resonance out of the body. But keep in mind also when you're looking at the all solid wood variations of these, this is C-Class, this is V-Class. Those are also going to give you different responses. You may get a little bit more rumble out of the GT body shape as a result of that difference. So your mileage may vary, but there you go. That's the differences kind of in them. And you know, if you look at this, it's kind of hard to see, but and it's I think above the camera. But the cutoff here with the neck on a 12 fret model, which is shorter, you know, arguably than a 14 fret model, is slight. It's maybe an inch difference, you know, if you put these right up next to each other, and you know, probably an inch 3/4 difference full neck length if you were to compare these. So let's put that one back, and we're going to go now to our larger full-size guitars and potentially longer scale lengths. So we've got our GC here, our Grand Concert. This is, in this particular straight up example, a much less expensive guitar, but represents a body shape that's still available from Taylor. This is an Academy 10, but what it's representing is a dreadnought shape, a square shoulder dreadnought shaped guitar. Now, prior to the introduction of the Grand Pacific, Taylor did offer a full-on traditional square shoulder dreadnought shape in the US lineup. There were 310s and 410s and 810s, which goes back to their beginnings in 1974. But those models were phased out. They are still available from the Tecate factory. You have the Academy 10 and 10E, which has a square shoulder dreadnought shape. And you also have the 110, 110E, 210, 210E available, along with CE versions in the 200 series of the square shoulder dreadnought shape. So if you do like the shape and you want to get it from Taylor, it is still available from their Mexico offerings. Let's talk about the dimensions, and these are going to sound very, very similar in just a minute. So this is a 24 and 7/8 inch scale on the Academy. It's a shorter scale length for the Academy because it's designed for beginners, and so it has a little slinkier feel. The normal 110, 210 would be a full 25.5 inch scale length. The nut width on this, 1/11/16. It's going to be the same on all the others. The length, 20 inches. The waist, 16 inches. The depth, 4 5/8. You're going to hear those numbers repeated again, so I'm going to say it one more time. 20 inches length, 16 inches wide, 4 5/8 inches deep. That is the square shoulder dreadnought from Taylor. Now, let's move on, and I'll tell you why you're going to hear those again. This is the most popular body shape from Taylor, bar none. This is a Builder's Edition 614 CE. It represents the Grand Auditorium body shape from Taylor. They came out with this in the mid-90s, and it really has taken off. In fact, there's a lot of copycats in the acoustic guitar market now who are copying this shape. Sometimes they're just calling it an auditorium or a small jumbo or what have you. But it's basically this design, and the idea here is very simple, but makes a lot of sense. The idea is to make something that's the same size as a traditional dreadnought guitar, but with a tighter waist and lighter strings, with bracing to match, that allows this guitar to be more versatile. So what does that mean? Well, that means that the scale length on this is the same as the guitar we just talked about. It is 25.5 inches scale length, okay? The nut width, since it's a US made guitar, is 1 3/4 inches. Now, if you buy a Grand Auditorium from Tecate, the 1/11/16 rule applies. 20, 16, 4 5/8. See, I told you you'd hear that again. This is the exact same dimensions as that square shouldered dreadnought. It just has a tighter waist. It has lighter gauge strings, whereas a traditional dreadnought, and previously like an 810 that Taylor made, would have medium gauge strings to drive that top more. By making a tighter waist, this does a number of things. One, it feels like a smaller guitar when it's sitting in your lap because it sits a little lower down. So your arm's not having to go over as large of a guitar. It doesn't have that squared off sound that you get by having that kind of shape here in the middle that you get on a dreadnought. And so it responds to a lighter touch. You're going to have a little bit more treble response. And this is a guitar that's extremely versatile. It really will do pretty much anything you throw at it well. You want to strum? Great. You want to flat pick? Great. You want to play fingerstyle? Great. You into tapping? It'll do it. It'll do any of those things very, very well. If you're primarily a fingerstyle player, a grand concert would probably be more suited for you. If you're primarily a strummer or flat picker, something that's more like a dreadnought or bigger may be more suited for you. But you get the idea. This is going to handle a lot of things. So if you're looking for that one guitar, then a Grand Auditorium GA body shape is probably what you want to look at first. And that is, not surprising, why this is the #1 body shape that Taylor makes. So moving on from here, the next body shape is also a fairly new one. That is the Grand Pacific, the GP body shape from Taylor. And the Grand Pacific is a round-shouldered dreadnought-inspired guitar that really has a different tone to everything else in Taylor's lineup. But guess what? You want to hear the dimensions? I knew you did. 25.5 inch scale, 1 3/4 inch nut width, which is the only one you'll see because there is not currently a Tecate model available of the GP body shape. 20 by 16 by 4 5/8. That's right. This is the exact same length, width, and depth dimensions as the Grand Auditorium, but it looks very different and it sounds very different. Why? Well, a number of reasons. One, it looks very different because it has a wider waist, just like a square shoulder dreadnought. But just like other round shoulder dreadnoughts, you have this softened aspect because the upper shoulders are a little softer and more rounded, making them a little narrower, and that affects what the waist looks like. Now the bracing, the shape, all of that goes into the sound. And the sound that you're going to get out of this is more rounded than the sound that you're going to get out of this. This is probably the most quintessential Taylor tone. What we consider to be articulate, sharp, balanced. You're hearing everything all at the same time. Kind of every note stays in its own lane. This is more reminiscent of guitars of yesteryear, a vintage sound where the leading edge of the note is blunted a little bit. And that gives you a nice warmth in every single note that you play. And the notes of a chord tend to start running together to give you a wall of sound rather than every note in the same lane. Each one of these has its own strengths and will appeal to different players and different genres of music. I like what Andy said once, the GP could be the general purpose guitar rather than the Grand Pacific. But there you go, it is with us, the Grand Pacific, and even though these are dimensionally the same, it starts moving more toward the large guitar metric, both in the feel, the strings, and the sound that you're going to get out of it. Moving on from the GP, we go to a now larger body shape. Dimensions are changing, and a lot of other things are changing as well. This is the guitar with a cutaway, without a cutaway. This is the new Grand Symphony Builder's Edition 816 CE. Now, this new Grand Symphony design with this beveled cutaway sound port beveled cutaway, something to that effect, is really a reworking of the Grand Symphony body shape that Taylor introduced again in the 2000s. Now, the Grand Symphony body shape was originally designed to be slightly bigger than the Grand Auditorium. To have that same kind of shape to it, the kind of sexy hips, if you will, but to grow it a little bit more to give you a big, bold, strumming sound. So what are the dimensions of this? Glad you asked. 25.5 inches is gone now. That used to be the scale length for the Grand Symphony. This is now a shorter scale length, 24 7/8. 1 3/4 inch nut width is going to be up at the top of the neck, 20 inches long, 16 1/4 inches wide, and 4 5/8 inches deep. So it's the same depth, it's the same length, but the width is a little bit bigger. In fact, it has the lower bout kind of grown out a bit in order to give it that larger, wider, more pregnant shape at the bottom, and that affects the shape of the waist and gives the whole sound or the whole guitar a bigger, richer, louder tone. So with the scale length and the new changes to this new version of the Grand Symphony, it does change the guitar a little bit. I don't know that I'd call it the big, bold strummer anymore. It has a different tone to it. The scale length and the change of the strings from mediums to light has made this really almost like a modern fingerstyle guitar, I might say. You can strum and you can flat pick on this all day long. But this seems to find a home with players kind of like Andy McKee, where you can fingerstyle play and do some tapping, alternate tunings. It's got a lot of richness. And this design with the beveled cutaway and sound port really gives your audience, as well as the player, kind of a three-dimensional, like Dolby Atmos surround sound experience to playing this guitar. What I find out of this guitar is it's a big guitar that responds to a light touch, and some players are wanting that. Some of you are wanting a lot of depth, a lot of richness, something that you can't get out of maybe a grand concert guitar, but you play fingerstyle, you play with a lighter touch, and a big guitar that might give you that depth and richness isn't going to respond to that light touch. This guitar does. And it does everything else you throw at it really, really well. I flat picked this guitar. You can see the reviews we've done of this guitar, as well as the 326 CE version and the K26 CE version. And all of them really respond very well, whether I'm picking it or playing fingerstyle. So in some ways, it's versatile like a Grand Auditorium is, but it's giving you a whole new dimension of sound that differs from that Grand Auditorium. It's worth picking up and playing if you happen to find one in the store. That's the Grand Symphony, and there's one guitar that is a little bit bigger. Moving on from the GP and the Grand Symphony, I need both hands for this guy. This is the 818E with Alamo inlays. That's what I call them. Taylor calls them Mission inlays, but they're wrong. They're Alamo inlays. Now, this Grand Orchestra was the first body shape designed by Andy Powers when he joined Taylor Guitars, and it replaced their Jumbo, which is honestly a shape that Taylor had inherited from Gibson and Guild. It is designed to be a Jumbo-style guitar that you don't have to chop wood to play. In other words, you can play this with a light touch and it's still going to be responsive. It doesn't have incredibly heavy bracing. You don't have to just be chopping wood all day long with a heavy pick in order to get response out of it. But if you want the thunder, it will bring the thunder, particularly in this rosewood variation, because it's also available as a 618E with maple back and sides, which is a whole nother dimension to the tone that you get out of it. Dimensionally, 25.5 inches on the scale length, so it's the longer scale length. 1 3/4 inch nut width, 25 5/8, so you've seen that we've actually gotten longer by 5/8, 16 3/4 inch wide. That's how far out we're going, a full 3/4 inches from where you have a GP or a Grand Auditorium. And finally, the depth. This is a 5-inch deep beast. That's right, from 4 5/8 to 5 inches depth. You can definitely feel it. If you're 5'8" like me, it feels like a big guitar, but it's such a big, wonderful, boomy, rich guitar. Yeah, I'll put up with the size of it in order to get the sound and the response out of this guitar. So all in all, if you go from the biggest to the smallest, you can find that Taylor has a lot to offer. Now, each of these guitars, they are going to sound different, period, because of the different tone woods that they have. But I'll give you a short little sample of each one so you can hear for yourself. So there you have it, a whole rundown of every body shape that Taylor Guitars offers. Hopefully this was helpful to you in determining what body shape would appeal most to you, maybe even fit you best. And for these two, really kind of help to clarify why you might want to look at the GT or the Grand Concert. And keep in mind, this is not a GS Mini. It is definitely not a GS Mini. It is a much fuller guitar as a result of it being bigger. But there you go. Size, it turns out, does matter. And all of the differences really do matter. So if you'd like any more information about any of these guitars or the various sizes Taylor offers, go to our website. It's alamomusic.com. You can check out the specs. You can message live with somebody on our site. Also, feel free to give us a call or come in. We'd love to help you find your next guitar. At the end of the day, the best guitar, regardless of size, is the one that you're playing. So keep playing guitar, keep coming back for more. We'll see you next time.